Okay. Today, if we have a very advanced speaker or some people who speak the English language very well, or they know a lot of words and a lot of concepts, or even with other native speakers, those conversations, you can have a lot of ideas, a lot of discussions, topics, words, things come up. So that's kind of a little bit, this is just a summary of the topics that came up today. It doesn't have to have a theme. It's not necessarily a PowerPoint presentation, but this is what was covered. I mean, these are topics that came up in a conversation. First, there's a news story here about a car being parked in front of a fire hydrant, and this happens sometimes. And the fire crew, the firemen, will just kind of, break your windows and put the hose through. So, we kind of talked about, is this, is that necessary? Is that being a bad, are they being a bad crew? I think no, because usually fire departments are, there's a fire, they don't have time to call a tow truck. But, some fire departments, I think they kind of have like a brotherhood, They have this type of feeling to them, right? So maybe they're nice, not so nice. Anyway, we then talked a little bit about Frankfurt. We talked about Germany and schools there and private schools and stuff. And then we talked about kind of Korean history, as far as maybe if you go to a school in another country, like a university or whatever, you might wonder a little bit about Korean history. So I said, yes, this book, Guksa, I have this book. And that the Korean language historically relies on a lot of Chinese characters. So there's, Chinese, I mentioned old photos from the Korean War, that when you look at the photos, you can see kind of, in some of the signs, you can often see Chinese characters. Or even in the government signs or the propaganda signs of the day. And I thought, I thought they're supposed to speak Korean, right? But knowing those old Chinese words is it's a lot of work. So we talked about that and how much, like, if you feel like you can learn a lot of words, it's better. But if you feel like it's too much, then people usually don't do it. Then we started talking about kind of like high-level words or words that professors use. I call them GRE words, or the GMAT. So if you study for a master's degree in America, if you study for a business MBA or something, you learn these words. And some of those words I was surprised to find in the in movies and stuff. But first, some of those words that we talked about today, actually every university student knows this: plagiarism. That, the first day of university, they tell everybody, do not do this. Do not be found guilty of plagiarism, because you will be kicked out of the school. Then we kind of talked about this word, autodidact, right? It's not a word I say too often, right?
Autodidact.
And the British...
Autodidact.
This is a person who learns on their own. And let's say you study a lot by yourself, and you know a lot, but if you meet professors, your knowledge is going to be a little bit different. And I made this point, I said this about Einstein. Einstein was a great example of that. That Einstein, because he studied in a government office in his free time, when he joined the university, he had some holes or gaps in his knowledge. But that happens. And maybe just like, university students, when they want to learn about a company or, Korean Air or whatever, the professors there teach, the curriculum is different sometimes. Anyway, so we talked about those. Those things came up. Now, this word, I learned this word because I was reading a book about the life of Einstein. But it's not a word I say. I'd almost never say it. One word that did come up that I mentioned, that I found, was this ruddy. And it's usually like having a healthy red color. You know, not the person whose face is white and sick. But it was in the Harry Potter movie. So I found it here, and he says it here. Play it? Maybe not. He says he's a ruddy pumpkin head. Which is a nice word. He could have said bloody pumpkin head. But ruddy would normally mean, it means like, red face, or like this one, ruddy-faced alcoholics.
Ruddy-faced alcohol. Ruddy-faced alcohol.
But that, again, is a word that my professors, I remember the professor telling me that word. Other than that, not a very common word. Then we kind of talked about, this book came up. That this guy, I like this book. He's a person who tries to understand professors and difficult topics, but he's a journalist, and he finds out the different controversies and things that people are discussing. There's that. Then, really an interesting thing, the gentleman who attended, Mr. Jung, he was using, like he was saying, all these I words, inculcate, inordinate, all these words, like there's a thing that you tell people, hey, let's say as many words that begin with I as you can, or something like this. And it was impressive. So we talked about that. Katusa also came up. We discussed this. And again, this is just a summary of everything that people talked about, and maybe you can learn from it too.